Okay, so this week's parasha is Bichu Kosai. Bichu Kosai is about laws, and one of the laws is Perak Chav Zayin, which is on page 710, 718, which is Pasuk verse 10, Pasuk Yud. So here we're dealing with someone who has an animal. He has an animal which he consecrated that he wants to bring. What for a sacrifice? Could be the sacrifice was because he wants to bring an olah. He wants to bring something that goes totally to God. So that's called a carbon olah. Or it could be a different sacrifice if someone did a sin by mistake. By mistake, someone, let's say by mistake, turns on the light on Shabbos. So that's a mistake. He forgets it's Shabbos, right? So he just walks in. The common case is in the bathroom. You walk in the bathroom Shabbos morning, you don't realize it. So that would be a shogeg. That's a mistake. It's not on purpose. On purpose, it's a little more stringent on Shabbos. Someone does something wrong, right? On Shabbos, someone does something on purpose. It's not good. He has to get a real big atonement, and that's more severe. But this is right there. He gets killed. But this is just.
That's pretty
strong. It's not a simple thing. Yeah.
He's not going to do it again.
He won't.
Well, that's because he wouldn't have use of the bathroom again.
Yeah. So that's pretty stringent, and that tells us what an avera is. Person should be very careful. This is the person has to always think back to who's talking here. This is God speaking, and Shem says to be careful with the Shabbos. And this is just showing us like someone did an avera, someone did something wrong. So it's not game. You could do something wrong. It's not. It's real. An avera is real, and therefore that would be the atonement where he gets such a punishment. Now. That's stoning. It's called stoning for that. But if he does it by mistake, he brings a carbon chatos. He brings a sacrifice called chatos for a chet. Chet means a sin. So what does he bring? So he brings a sheep. He brings a sheep. So he goes to his flock and he sees one of the sheep. Now, right when they're in the flock, they're not holy right now. Right now they're all regular mundane animals. But right now he says, I have to bring now a sacrifice. So he says, this animal, I want to make it holy as a chatos, as a sacrifice. So now this animal now becomes holy. It becomes instantly holy, and now you can't use it.
While it's still in the field, he chooses it?
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
That's the whole idea of the Kaddish, is to separate,
what?
right?
Based on his intention to use it?
Intention, but it has to be with the fact that he designated it. Okay. And he states, Harei zeh, like this is a sacrifice. I want to make this for a sacrifice of a chatos or a different type of sacrifice. Then it becomes instantly holy, and you can't use it for certain things.
Even before he checks it to make sure there's no flaws in it or something?
Right, there can't be any flaws.
Right, now there is another idea, right? It can't have any flaws, or else you can't bring it on the altar. So that's another idea. So he'll have to check it. He'll have to make sure he does that right. Now, let's say he comes into his field and he sees that animal like that. So the rule is now that animal is good to go. It's ready for the sacrifice. So it will be till he brings it on the altar, right? It's going to have to remain in its holiness. And then when he sacrifices it, he slaughters it, and he brings he spritches a little blood on the altar. That will be the actual sacrifice. But till then, it remains in the holiness. The only way to take off the holiness will be if it gets a blemish. Like Irving said, let's say then it's in the field and it gets one of the blemishes. Right? There's a list of blemishes in the Talmud. And let's say it trips and it has to be a blemish which will be permanent. It'll have to be a permanent blemish. Then it will be not fit for the altar. So then you're able to redeem it.
Okay, so if the animal, let's say, cut itself, but then later the wound heals.
Right.
It's okay then.
So if it's right,
while it has to heal first before, but it's still
right. It's called a blemish is called a mum. In Hebrew, it's called a mum. So you can get a blemish which will pass over and go by. That's okay as long as you wait till it gets better, or there's a permanent blemish. I was once in Israel, and there was a boy who was a Kohen. I was eaten by a family of Kohen, and the boy he got a cut on his finger. Now the Kohen also, he's the one who does the service, but he can't have a blemish on himself either. So anyway, the boy cut his finger, so he was all upset. He said, I won't be able to do the service in the temple when it's rebuilt. So his father told him, don't worry, it's going to pass. It's going to heal, so you're okay. But this family, they were on another level. They were like, thinking in terms of, that's what the son was thinking. The father gave him a great bringing up. He was bringing up the child, on a different level. Anyway, so what does a person do? So if he has this animal, it gets a blemish on it, then he could redeem it. It's called, in Hebrew, pidyon. It could be poda. He could redeem it, and he would put it onto a certain amount of money, and then he could buy another animal with that money. And this animal, he could just eat. So that's the law.
That's why I thought, because of this idea of somebody who is required to go to Yerushalayim and they don't travel with their animal, they can designate the money to buy there. So that's why.
But that's a different thing. That's called a tithe. That's in reference to the tenth, the tithe. That every 10 animals that you have to take off one of the animals and give it to Hashem. That is actually.
But I don't think I was referring to that.
That's called tithe.
No, I understand the idea of tithing. I think, but I thought like if somebody had to travel with their
if they're too far away,
their chatas, they don't have to bring that one because they could use the money for that and rebuy.
But that's really referring to the tithe of the Meiser or the Meiser Sheni tithe.
Okay.
That's a different tithe. In terms of the. That's a different thing.
Okay.
Now, the question is, can a person, he has one animal, so he goes into his barn, he sees a nice cow there, so he says, harei ze chatas, I want to make this into a chatas, I'm going to bring this for the sacrifice. And then, a few days later, he gets second thoughts about bringing this animal for the offering. So he wants to transfer the holiness onto another animal. Does that work? To transfer their holiness onto another animal.
Now, why would you want to do that?
yeah.
Now, why would he want to do that?
He's going to see that one's better than the other, let's say.
Which one's better?
No, maybe he sees another one. Hey, that's even a nicer one.
That's one idea. But on the other side, we'll see what the Torah says about such an idea, and it seems that there's other ideas which are for the bad. Why a person would want to do that?
Okay, one other thing, it says like they would be both holy, right?
So let's read it. Let's read the verse aside. We got to read it aside. 1 second. So here we got the verse 10. It starts actually verse 9. V'im behema sheyakrivu mimeno. So you have now an animal that you're bringing for an offering, as a korban la Hashem, as a sacrifice to Hashem. So kol asher yitei mimenu la Hashem yeh kodesh. So you're going to bring this animal, it'll be holy, and even Rashi speaks out over here about, let's say you only sanctify one part of it. Okay, verse 10. Lo yachlifenu. Do not switch it, right? Do not exchange it. V'lo yamir oisai, and do not make any substitutes for it. Toiv bira, a good one for a bad one, a ra b'toiv, or a bad one for a good one. Don't make any switches. Not good for bad, not bad for good. So, that's first of all, here we have a negative commandment. Negative commandment, you're not allowed to switch it. Let's say someone does switch it. He takes the cow, and he says, Harei zu, I'm making this one tachazu. This one is instead of that one. I want to transfer the holiness onto this animal. So he wants to do what these 4 letters called yamir, right? It says do not exchange it, do not substitute it. So he wants to do yamir. He wants to do what's called timura. He wants to make timura. Yeah.
So this is referring to animals thus that are unblemished, right?
Right. Unblemished. Which means if they would be blemished, then he would have had an opening what to do. He could have redeemed it onto money or onto a different animal if they'd have a blemish.
Okay, so Torah command, it's not substitution, obviously, but this Torah command says that you can redeem an animal that you offer to Hashem, let's say, and add a fifth to it. Like, let's say you... you say, I want that animal, so you want it back, but you give money plus a fifth of it.
So as long as it has a blemish, you could redeem it, and you have to also add a fifth surcharge.
You can't redeem an animal that is good.
Right.
Is it only applied?
Only with the blemish. Yes.
Only the blemish.
Right. Right.
Parsha Bahar talks about it, right? Parsha Emor.
Right. Parsha Emor is all about the idea of blemishes, which animals, which blemishes make an animal invalid.
So what does it say? A negative don't, and then it says, but if we do it...
How could it reach that state then of having a blemish? Because it would never have been accepted. When they...
let's say it gets a blemish, right? Let's say it's going in the field and it trips and gets a real blemish, which is permanent, right?
So he still has to give the value of that animal to Hashem plus a fifth, no matter what.
Which means he
can't give that animal, but since he designated it, he has to give Hashem something, but he can't give that animal.
So what he does is he redeems that animal onto money or onto a different animal, and then the holiness goes into the money or the next animal, and this animal he could eat. Right. Now, so the question is, but let's say he doesn't take that route, so then that's the only route he can take. But if he wants to now switch it and put the holiness from this animal onto that animal, that is called a avera. That's called a lav. A lav means this is a negative commandment. He's not allowed. Those are the words. It even says twice. Could even be two negative commandments. It says lo yachlifenu, don't substitute it, v'lo yamir isai, and don't switch it, don't exchange it, either a bad animal for a good animal, or a good animal for a bad animal. And now the interesting idea is, let's say he does it. Let's say he goes against the Torah. So what's the consequences here? What will be the net result? So it's an interesting din that the verse continues, V'im hamer yamir, if he does this timura, he does this exchange. So the verse says, behema bebehema, one animal for another. So just look at this right before we turn the page. The second to bottom line, it says, behema bebehema, v'haya, it will be, whose marasai yihiyeh kaidesh. That animal and the exchange will be holy. They'll both be holy. Which means he doesn't. Substitution doesn't work. Not only doesn't work, but both animals now are holy. The original one doesn't lose its holiness, and now the holiness also transfers onto the second one. That's the din here.
In a way, it's like when he does it, he has the one animal. Now he needs a second animal as a sin offering for exchanging.
Could be that's an idea there. Yeah.
Just about.
Now, so that, yeah, it could be. That's an interesting idea. So this is the din, and I want to tell you how the Rambam brings this down. Just it's an interesting idea, but to get into the root of what is wrong, what is the reason of this mitzvah. So this is, you'll find this in it's called Hilchos Tamura. Tamura is the rules of exchanges, and the idea, I want to read to you how he says it, right? I want to read to you how the Rambam writes this. So the Rambam, when he writes this, could be a flaw in
your character, I think. Because you could do that with a woman too. Oh, I found somebody. Goodbye.
Right? Yeah. Okay. So I'll have to see. Let me show you what his. Let me show you what the Rambam. I'll read to you how he says it. The Rambam says you should not switch it, right? And then he goes on. Even though all of the statutes of the Torah, they're all decrees, but he says it's fitting that we should think into them to understand them. And if you give a reason, you should give a reason. So the Rambam says, I'm going to supply, even though here he wrote, it's called the Yad HaChazaka, this is the Rambam's big work, but usually he's writing just the actual laws. He came to write laws, but in the end of every set of laws, he gave a little bit of reason, a little bit of what we call like ethical ideas that come out from each of the topics that are being studied. So here at the end of this Tamura, he writes the following idea. So he says, this is the idea of what the Torah meant to say. The idea is that the Torah went down deep into the subconscious of a person and understood that everyone has a Yetzer Hara. Yetzer Hara, right? What's that? That's the evil inclination that Hashem put inside of us, that we should have the ability to choose, free choice, free will. So there's no free will if we would just come down here with just our neshama, just our Holy Spirit from which was under the heavenly throne. So there wouldn't be any choice, right? We would come down here and we would just see mitzvos, so we would just help out, do acts of kindness. We would learn Torah. We wouldn't want to do anything wrong if we just had our the holy neshama in us. Therefore, Hashem had to make it that we have now the body with mixed in with this evil inclination, which tries to get us to do things which are not right. And that's where the fight begins, and that's where our free will is. So the Rambam writes that the nature of a person is, right, the teva means nature, is that he wants to increase his acquisitions, right? You want to buy more things, you want to get a house, a bigger house, a car, right, a better car. You want to get, all types of good things. Whatever, we should have plenty. We should have plenty. But in terms of the idea of the nature of a person, he's always trying to increase what he has. So therefore, the Rambam says, let's say this fellow, he said, I'm making a vow. I want to give this animal to the temple to bring as a sacrifice. So he might have regret. And he might want to say, you know what, I really want to take it back. And maybe, you know what I want to even do? I want to even redeem the animal for less than its value. Right? We spoke out that there was one valid way to redeem an animal if it gets a blemish. You could redeem it for its value. So you know what? A person might say, well, it's worth $100. I'll redeem it for $85. So on this idea came the Torah to say you have to add a fifth. That was what he was saying. You have to add a fifth onto the total. Therefore, a person won't. Right, his idea is the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, will try to get him to pay a lower amount for the redemption. So the Torah said add a fifth, and therefore that will be that will help weigh that he shouldn't be tilted and swayed to give a cheaper price. Even if he gives a cheaper price, he'll add the fifth. That's the first idea. And then he says over here the idea of not switching it, because what might happen? A person might switch it for an animal that's worse. You might want to get, you'll say this animal, you start thinking to yourself, this is my good animal. This is my great nice cow. So, and then I have a cow that's not so good, it's not so nice. Doesn't look so beautiful. I'd rather give that one to the Beis HaMikdash. I'd rather bring that one to God because, well, it depends what level the fellow's on. If he's on a level, where he's really God-fearing, he'll want to bring the best to God. But if the Yetzer Hara, if the evil inclination starts to get in on him, starts to work on him, the evil inclination says, oh, well, what's the difference anyway? It's going up to God, and God doesn't really need the better one, doesn't help him. So you might start to say to yourself, with the evil inclination, I'll switch it, I'll put the holiness onto the inferior animal, and then I'll keep the good one for myself. Right?
You're basing that on the premise he's always going to go to an inferior. What if he wants to make mehudar the offering?
Let's he wants to make a better one. Let's he wants to take a bad one and put out a good one. So let me read you how he says it, and we'll see from there. And the idea is that the Torah didn't want a person to do this idea. The Yetzer Hara will tell him, well, I'll put the good on the bad. So therefore, he didn't want to, right? And he might even trick himself, or he might even tell others, I'm going to do it on this, and it's good. I'm doing good on a good, or bad on a good. But really, he might really be doing a good one. He'll put the holiness onto the bad one. So therefore, the Torah said across the board, don't do that. Don't do a switch. Now, they went across the board, and that really sealed up all cases. You can't even do to put a bad on a good. Right? That's why the Torah made it both ways, because once you do, right, if you're able to do one way, you might do it the other way. So Torah made it across the board. Don't do good or on bad, or bad on good. Another idea also, even in the idea that you're saying, that let's say you'll take a bad animal and make it a good one, but sometimes you might trick yourself. The Rambam saying, or you might even trick other people, or you might think other people don't know, or trick yourself and say, I'm really putting it on a better one. But maybe subconsciously, maybe you have a reason why. Maybe you like this animal better. The other, right? Maybe you like the first animal better, but the second one might have an attribute, so you'll say this one's better. So you could trick yourself or other people. So the Torah wanted to stay away from all this, and it wants to protect the person from doing this idea that the evil inclination might suggest. So it ruled across the board: don't do it. Don't switch any of the animals, and if you do it, both of them will be holy. The Rambam calls it a kanas. Kanas means a fine. Rambam says it's a fine, because really, why should they both be holy? If anything, right? Say it works, say it doesn't work, right? Say you're not allowed to do it, okay, he's not allowed to do it. If he does it, say it doesn't work, right? Only the first animal should remain holy. If it works, so let the second animal be holy, and the first one lose the holiness, but he went against the word of Hashem, so he'll get an Aveira. But what's this middle stage here? There's a middle stage here that it works, the second one's holy, and the first one's holy, and he gets the Aveira. Why is this middle, why do we ever find such a thing that he did something wrong, and both animals are holy? Right? Either it works, so the second one should only be holy, or it doesn't work, so only the first one should be holy. So the Rambam says it's a kanas, it's a fine. It's a fine to try to dissuade a person from doing this idea which the Torah doesn't want you to do it. And therefore this is all meant, the Rambam says these words, Lochof es yitzvah, it's meant to help a person fight against his evil inclination.
Yeah, because like let's say a guy chooses his best of the flock for Hashem. Later he says, that's my best breeding animal. I mean, I could make money from this animal, and now I'm letting you get away. Maybe I should have chosen the second best. It doesn't have a blemish either. What's the problem? But
right.
You can see the Yetzer Hara going to work. You can
But
say,
the Torah puts the Yetzer Hara right in the pasuk. I mean, it says, and if you do it. So of course it's going to tempt you. But if it just left it at saying, and this is the way it is, and it didn't continue and said, but if you do it, they're both holy. By putting that extra in, it's playing on her. So.
One second. What should I write? What would you say?
No,
how would you say if you were writing the mitzvah?
If it would just left, just let it be without saying, and if you do this, they're both holy. If it wouldn't have included that,
the Torah should write, don't switch the holiness from this animal to
like
that.
Yeah.
Now, what's the law?
Other sentence in is letting you play with your Yetzer Hara. To say, oh, okay, but it's saying it. But if I do so, then your Yetzer Hara goes. How's your game?
By the Torah saying that you're going to make both of them holy, it's saying whatever your reasoning was.
But it wouldn't have to say that if it didn't.
But what it's pointing out is that whatever your reasoning was that you wanted to switch it in the first place isn't going to work, right?
No, but it said, don't switch it. Don't switch the good for the bad or the bad for the good. Right. That's it. It could have left it like that. And then, but by the next verse, it said, and if you do it, they're both holy.
Right.
That idea is,
in other words, if you go
encouraging your Yetzer Hara to play on you.
No.
Oh, I see it. I see it very clearly like that. That's how I see it.
What's the law? But what's the law?
But you're going to
end up losing. But if you do it, I mean,
you lose big time. If you like the second one, if you like the first one better,
but you
end up losing both.
So you
don't get to keep the second one, but the first one, I should say. That was the reason you wanted to switch. If that was the reason you wanted to switch.
The Torah has to tell you what the law is, because
what would
you have said the laws? Don't do it. Let's say I do it. I want to know the din, but I want to know the ruling.
Saying if you do it, it's letting people.
But I want to know. But what's the law? Well, I want to know what's the law.
My question would be is why does the Torah actually be so explicit? I mean, there's a lot of stuff in the Torah where we don't, it just sort of says something, but it doesn't go into all, the penalties and everything. For that, you go to the oral tradition, you go to the Gemara, the Mishnah, and all the rest of it. Here it's being very specific, and it's almost taking it from the beginning to the end, something you don't often see.
Yes, for sure. That's very true. It's very unique that even the verse is telling you, and the Rambam saying the verse is telling you, it's a fine.
It's like we don't have to even go into the Gemara or the Mishnah or the this or the that and to figure out, to extrapolate, how many times we say, the Torah was very, very succinct, it kind of gives us a hint, but now we know from the oral tradition, and you can go through 18 pages and you'll learn the halacha, right?
Yeah.
Here, it's like it's spelled out right in the Torah there.
No, it's definitely true.
Chosen.
Yeah, and it's very unique that
would be my question.
It's very unique that the Torah should tell you that idea of the fine. Now, in terms of your question, the Torah has to tell you what are the consequences if someone does. Let's say someone transfers the holiness.
Yeah.
So what happens? What would you have said? You would have left it blank. But I want to know. Let's say he does. Let's say he does it.
So what's his penalty?
Does it work or does it not work?
It can't work whether you want it to be extra holy and get it and switch it to an even better one. No. And it can't work if you want it to be a bit of a miser or whatever because you realized, let's go with the not so good one, and that's why you wanted to switch. Either way, because both of them become holy, you lose both of them.
Right, but the verse has to tell you that. It has to tell you that they both become holy. If it wouldn't have told you that, I would have thought maybe it would work. Just like you could redeem it onto money, maybe I could switch it onto another.
How would you know you wouldn't get lashes or something? That what could be some other kind of penalty.
If he switches.
If he switches, say, so he does get very switches.
That's true. That's true too.
I mean,
he does get lashes, by the way. If he switches it, he does get lashes
for everything.
He gets lashes for any negative commandment, which there is an action. Now,
so how does he? So there you go. So if the Torah didn't say it, you might think he just got lashes.
Right. So you wouldn't have known. Well, you wouldn't have known what happens. Does the holiness transfer or not? So it has to tell you who usmarasa yeh kodesh. Both of them are holy.
If it didn't say that in that specific, I wouldn't have even thought to do it.
One second.
Oh,
One
wait
second.
a minute.
The Torah tells you don't do it, you might do it, right? You only do it if the Torah will give you the suggestion that if you do it, the Torah doesn't say.
I see that clearly. I don't know if anybody understands what I'm trying to say.
I understand what you're saying. There is an idea that if the Torah will say it, that if someone tells you the idea, they're planting the idea in the positive in your head, it might.
And if your mind isn't even conceptually thinking of another way, but this.
But I have a question.
In a lot of ways, you're right. It's like speeding on the highway.
You're
allowed to
Are
speed,
you talking
just
about
have to
pushing
pay
the
a fine
bad, the
if
good,
you're
and
caught.
good for the bad? Like you can choose.
No. Because
You're not allowed
it
to
says
speed.
after that,
Right.
it could have stopped right there. I'm saying
A lot of it, like
without going into
The penalty, but why not go into the penalty? We get the penalties for other things. You will be taken away from your you'll be cut off from your people, or or you'll be stoned, or you'll be sent.
It has to tell you the penalty, right? Now, I want to ask you, what Irving is saying that when you have when the verse speaks in the positive, it's giving you a visualization of you doing it. So maybe that will lead a person to do it faster than it would have just said the negative.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
You can go continue. I don't mean to hold you up.
Okay, anyway, but that was the idea. But the answer still is that the verse is just stating what happens if someone does it. They both become holy. Yeah.
Could I share this here with you?
Yeah.
This is in Malachi, in verse 11, and I think it lines exactly right up with that pasuk that you were teaching. From verse 11 down, about bringing offerings that are blemished and everything, how God feels about it.
Right. So right, he says that it's right. It's not right. It's not good. Some people will bring, right? They will bring these blemished offerings, right? So that's right. That's terrible. God's
calling that person there a charlatan in there.
Right.
Doing that.
Right.
But we weren't really even talking about that here.
Which part?
About bringing a korban that was possible.
No, but he's bringing up the idea that there is an evil inclination for a person to give the bad one to God, or to keep the best one for himself. Right? If you ever you have to give something to your friend. You ever have to give him, like you have two of them. Like you want to keep the bad one for yourself.
There's no obligation here to give the best one.
Right. That's true. There is none. But if you consecrate,
He designated it, then
that one is holy. And that one, the Yetzer Hara might try, the evil inclination will try to get you to switch it and keep the best one for yourself.
Yeah.
And therefore the Torah had to make a fine to try to...
See, sometimes the Yetzer Tov kicks in first. And then the Yetzer Hara
Right.
comes by and says, what do you think you're doing?
Right.
True.
That's very true.
That's right.
That's very true.
Are you nuts?
That's very true. A lot of times a person might get inspiration, right? He gets inspiration. Someone, maybe someone wasn't feeling well or something, or he needed a big salvation. So he started pledging, and he gave, this animal, or some type of good experience. And then, like a day later, he found what he's looking for, or he got the salvation, and now he looks at his flock and he sees his best animal. So he might have regrets. So the Torah has to come, but it's a fascinating thing that the Torah is coming to help fight the evil inclination. It's trying to help with the good inclination to fight the evil inclination, and it's helping you. It's giving you helping you up. Support. It's a support system. The Torah is telling you you're going to have both of them be holy, and you shouldn't redeem it, because if you redeem it, you're going to have to add on a fifth. So it's very fascinating that the Torah is even helping you. Hashem wants us to really do the mitzvahs, right? He's helping us out. Yeah.
I was just gonna ask that why would it make like a monetary penalty in this case, in the sense that this is a holy thing. This isn't a business deal, right? This isn't between people. This is a whole. You're giving it to the Beis Hamikdash, right? It's korban. So it's for all spiritual reasons. By designating an animal, it's kind of like you've made a vow. But when you make a vow, you say I'm going to do such and such, and it's an actual vow, which you shouldn't really even do anyway, unless we're very sure we're going to keep it, right? But we can annul vows. We can do an annulment of vows. We do them on Yom Kippur, but we can do it by Beis Din and stuff like that.
Right.
So why couldn't a person say, okay, I want that sheep, whatever. But for whatever his reasons, good or bad, he says, I want this sheep now. Why can't he go to Beis Din and say, I did designate this, but I want to designate this. Why can't Beis Din sort of annul his vow? It's not a business deal. He didn't sort of.
It's interesting, but in a way, it's a great question. And what we have here, Brian is asking here how it works, the consecration of a sacrifice. Like what exactly is it? The mechanics going under the hood of how it works. So it would seem, and the law is, the minute you say, let's say, Harezu Ola, this is a sacrifice, so now it's instantly kadosh. It's holy right now. Right now you can't just use it for your plowing, because it instantly became holy. So it's different than a vow. A vow would be, let's say I vow I'm going to give my cow, a cow, to the temple. A vow is that I will do something, but here it's already holy. It's already one step along the way that you have to bring it actually to the temple, but the cow is already imbued in the holiness. The minute you said Harezu Ola, it becomes a Ola, it becomes a sacrifice right there.
No.
So that's why it would be one step worse than a case where if he made a vow, said I want to bring 10 cows to the temple, then maybe he could annul such an idea because it's still in the idea form. So the vow he could annul if he finds a reason why he didn't realize how much it would cost, he didn't realize what he was saying. Maybe they'll give him an opening, he could take it apart in that case, yeah.
But you make a vow, you say, I'm going to do X. As soon as you make that vow becomes an obligation on you.
Right. But here,
in that very moment, it's not something that comes up in the future.
But here,
so if you say, I'm going to have this cow is going to be my Ola,
But that's worse than a vow. That's what I'm saying. It's worse than a vow. Vow means I will give this to the temple, or I will, give $100 to the temple, or I will do this and this. I'll write a vow. I will go to pray.
You can say, I'm going to give this cow for a korban. I'm going to give this to the Beis Hamikdash, but if I give $100 to the Beis Hamikdash, that I could get annulled by a base.
So we'll have to think about it. It's a good question. We have to go into all these laws. But in terms of the cow, when you say this cow is holy, it becomes a holy cow. Right there, it's already has so. It could be that's why it's different than a vow. A vow could be what will I do in the future. Okay, so that's the idea. So the Rambam is saying here, let's just read the last few words here, that it's a fascinating idea that the Torah is actually coming to help you out, to try to help you that you shouldn't do something wrong. And therefore he says the last words are that it's to come help a person fight his evil inclination and to fix his views, fix his mindset on how he's supposed to do the mitzvos and to come help him out. And he says, the Rambam writes that most of the laws in the Torah are just good advice, how to keep a person far away from doing anything wrong. And he says, they're from the one who gives the best advice, right? To fix, and it will help fix our minds and to straighten out all of our actions. And therefore he writes, that's the idea here. It's the whole idea why the pasuk is saying don't do it is coming to the idea of don't do it. That's the aveira. But after the next verse is written to try to help us along to do that mitzvah, that we shouldn't slip up, right? So therefore that's the idea, the basis for the mitzvah. Now, if you want to know how this applies, right, I'll just tell you how this applies practically, right? So, first of all, you'd have to speak out if you're saying those words. I'm redeeming it, or am I substituting it, right? Am I exchanging it? right? Let's say it has a blemish. So it depends what words you use. If you say, I want to redeem this onto this, so then you're allowed. If you say, I want to substitute this instead of that, so that would already be Tamura. That would be the problem. So that person has to be very careful in the words that he uses, because or else, right, that's what makes all the difference in the world. Now, in terms of, it's interesting to show maybe one more idea here. Yeah, the one more din here. Let's say someone, let's say he does Tamura, right? He does Tamura, he does this thing wrong. So it says it can only be with, first of all, it has to be on his animal, right? He can't do Tamura on someone else's animal. It doesn't work on someone else's animal, which means I can't go over to your animal and try to transfer the holiness onto a different animal. It has to be on the one who is the owner of the sacrifice. Okay, except if the one who owns the sacrifice states, anyone who wants could come and do Tamura on my animal, then anyone could come and do it. Now that's the first idea. And then he's saying, what about the children? Let's say they do Tamura. So the person does the Aveira, he actually flips the Kedusha from here onto there, but it actually stays on the first one. Now, the one who he puts it onto has a baby. What's the ruling of the one, right now, this one who gets Tamura, who gets the holiness, if that has a baby? Is the baby going to be holy? What's the ruling on that? So on that, it says that it's not. I don't believe that the baby will become tameh, right? It's only the actual one that we put it on. And another thing is not tameh. Sorry,
Okay, cool.
holy. It will only be holy that animal and not the baby.
Holy calf. No holy calf.
The holy calf. And the other idea is also, and you can only do Tamura on one animal which is holy, actually from the from holiness that you spoke on.
But if the cow was pregnant when you did that, and then had the baby, then would the baby be Kaddish?
What happened?
Kaddish?
One.
So you switched it onto a pregnant cow.
Right.
And then after you did that, the cow gave birth the next day, whatever.
Maybe
now is that
could be considered blemished? I don't know.
It might be a blemish.
So now that will what's the blemish?
Because
I'm just saying
it's not a blemish.
Could be considered a blemish.
No, it's not a blemish.
No.
It's but it was not a separate being.
Not fit for an offering because it's pregnant.
So this is actually
is that a disqualification?
we have to look that up. That's an interesting question. But it could be
it wasn't.
But your question would be in terms of any animal. Let's say I say this animal is holy and it has a baby in the stomach. So then you have to ask the question right there.
Right.
So it could be the baby will also be holy in that case.
In that case.
But in the case of Tamura, the baby will not be holy because it's only on her, only on the mother. And he ends off and states that this is irrelevant in all times, right? If a person has an animal today, it will be relevant, right? It doesn't matter, if we have the temple, but it's still relevant if you have an animal that you want to bring to the temple, right? Let's say you think the temple will be built any day, so therefore that will be relevant. A person has to be careful in this idea. And he'll get malchus if he does this.
There was no significance between male or female animals. One was the same as good as another.
The chinuch writes it's relevant. He writes it's relevant to male and females, but he's talking about people. It's relevant whether a man does this, a man cannot do it, or a lady cannot do it. But it's also relevant in terms of any animal. Yes, in terms of any animal, it would be relevant. Yeah.
No, but a korban could be male or female animal, no problem.
Yes.
Interchangeably.
Well, it depends which type. There are different types of korbanos which come for different things that are done wrong.
Some of them have to be male, some of them have to be female?
Right. Some of them have to be male, some of them have to be female. Okay. For a chatas, it happens to be a sheep, a female. Okay. But for everyone, it's different. Okay, so this is an idea that we could take with us at least to try to help, the Rambam calls it to fight the evil inclination. So this pasuk, this mitzvah, is coming to teach us to try to do that. The Gemara actually speaks about this, that a person should also try to fight his evil inclination. And if you have the opportunity to help two people, you could either help your friend or your enemy. Right? Let's say you see two people coming down the street with a lot of packages, and they both ask you for your help. Who do you help?
You have to do your enemy. You're commanded to do your enemy.
Why?
To fight the evil inclination.
The answer is to fight the evil inclination. It's called you should bend. You should bend the Yetzer, try to bend the evil inclination to try to subdue it. To subdue it a little bit, because if you don't fight it, then he rules. So the Gemara there learns out that you should always go to the enemy, give him precedence, because you have to try to, you wouldn't want to help your enemy. So, if there's not a good reason why you hate him, right, the Gemara speaks about
But
why
we're not talking
you hate
your
him.
enemy. You're talking about
Somebody you don't
a
like.
Jew that you don't have a good relationship with. That
Yeah, not
I'm not
like
talking your
not the Syrians.
enemy.
So, no, but Tosfos speaks about your question, but it comes out that you might hate him a little bit for one reason or another. You should subdue your evil inclination and try to fight it. So here he's saying that the Torah also is giving you like a little bit of a knas. It's giving you a fine. The person has to look for different ways to force his evil inclination, right? Maybe he should give himself a fine. If he doesn't, do this and this mitzvah that he really wants to do, he's going to have to. He thinks he'll save money. He should give himself a fine. I'm going to give, I'm going to give double or something.
Yeah.
And you see a poor person coming to collect charity.
It doesn't do that. But it doesn't do that with tzedakah. It says you have to take care of yourself and then your family, and then.
It's true. You do have to take care of yourself, but you also have an
But it says, like here we're talking about you have to help your enemy as opposed to your friend.
Yeah.
But and give lots of tzedakah, it says you do the nucleus and then.
It's true.
Then you go.
But let's say
farther out.
it's true. But let's say your enemy comes to collect tzedakah, and your friend comes to get tzedakah. Who do you give first?
The laws of tzedakah say your friend,
So the laws of tzedakah say you give.
your family.
Number one, you give your family.
Right.
Number two, you give your people in your neighborhood.
Right.
Right. The Jew, it should be a Jew. It goes on.
Right.
There's order of precedence, but that's not touching the question of if he's your good friend or someone who irritates you.
Yeah, what if he's in your family, but he irritates you? Which never happens, I know, but...
So the question is, who do you give? Let's say you have someone who irritates you and someone who doesn't irritate you. Then you would apply this question that we spoke about. That question of who do you help out with the packages.
It could even be...
You'd apply it to...
It could even maybe be envy, am I right? So say someone in your family, say they're really wealthy.
Right.
You kind of envy them, You were in the same business, he was really successful, you were not. So you have a certain amount of envy towards him that, you try to fight, but...
Right.
So, but then if he needed something, so you'd be more apt to maybe help him because...
Someone in the family.
Yeah, whatever. No, but because he's the one that you envy.
Oh, if you have you, okay.
He's saying that
In other words,
a little bit
it
of
doesn't necessarily
space.
have to be he's your enemy. It could be that maybe there's a guy who's like you and a guy who you envy. Who would you give first? Would it work the same way, or does it have to...
You striving to be like him?
No, you're
Or you're
it's
jealous
not a
of
good
him?
trait to be jealous of
To be
somebody
jealous.
Right.
or to envy somebody. So if both of them needed help with their packages, whatever,
Right. Yeah. So that
you
would
might
be-
want to go to the person who you envy and help him first.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Right. So whatever your
Even though your inclination would be to go to the guy who's more like you.
Right.
Right.
Right. In all cases,
Right.
the
No,
evil.
it
Right.
doesn't
In all
have
cases,
to be
you
just
apply
be an
this.
enemy, in other words.
Right,
That's
right.
my
It doesn't
point.
mean literally enemy.
Right.
And the words of what I once heard is that one of the deepest things in the world is a person's character traits. It's deep, and like you're bringing up, a person has many different intentions and many different reasons why he would want to do something or not, right? And it could be jealousy, envy, or he hates him. So this is the deepest of the deep. A person has to always work on himself to try to understand himself and to know what his real intentions are. And when he understands it, then the Torah wants him to try to fix it and try to fight it, try to work on it, and subdue that trait, and then a person becomes a complete person. Okay, so this is the mitzvah for today called Temura. There's a whole Masechta on it. There's a whole in the Talmud.
I'm glad I picked